here, but we'll get started so we keep everything on time here. So good morning, everyone, and again, welcome to our Acumen Webinar Wednesday series. This morning, we have a special guest speaker, and I'll introduce her in just a moment. But we're going to cover two products that we feel are add-ons to your Sage 300 solution that really provide a lot of value for the areas that they cover. The first is going to be a product called RecXpress, which helps with bank services and really automates your reconciliation process. We all have to do bank recs, but I have not met anyone yet that comes in every day and really loves to do a bank rec. So why not put a tool in place that can help you do that, speed up that process, import files. You don't have to use an OFX format anymore. So if your bank doesn't allow that format, don't worry about it. You can use RecXpress and it will literally allow you to do any file type, including Excel files. You can predefined bank formats are available, and they'll set up new ones if they're not there for you. So really any file that you can download from your bank works. And then we're also going to cover a product called Document Management Link by a company called Orchid. And this is a product that allows you to link files and documents to different fields in Sage 300. And then you can access them directly from your existing Sage 300 screens. So it puts the documents where you want them, where you can find them, and where you need them. You can link documents to any combination of unique fields on a Sage 300 screen, and you can also control where the documents are displayed with optional role-based filters if you want to. So we really feel that this can help with improved customer service, improve productivity, streamline your operations, and really can also enhance or build on any existing scanning or document management package that you have. Now, let me just introduce quickly the team on the phone here. So, of course, this is Nick Nabosny, and your account management team here is with me, Jen and Max. And we also have Nancy Lavery from Robert Lavery and Associates with us, and we've been working with Nancy for, I'll just say, a number of years because it's been a long time. And Nancy has offered to take us through a nice tour of these two different products and applications, and then certainly answer any questions for you at the end. So, Nancy, I'll go ahead and hand it over to you if that's okay, and take us for a tour, please.
Thanks very much, Nick. I appreciate it. And thank you, everyone, for taking the time today to review these two products with us. We prefer to show you the products, so I'm just going to jump over to Sage 300. And as Nick mentioned, the first product we're going to cover today is the RecXpress for bank services. So both of the products that we're going to be looking at today are written with the SDK, which is the software development kit that Sage uses when they develop Sage 300. So these products will install inside your Sage 300 environment. And will attach, in the case of RecXpress for bank services, it will actually install itself within the bank services module. And similar to the other modules and features within Sage 300, you can choose what users would have access to this tool. So the main screen of RecXpress for bank services is where you can import that bank file. So we're going to link to an existing bank code within Sage 300. And as Nick mentioned, there's a rules template which gives you the ability to generate rules from your bank statement so that the next time that type of entry comes through your bank statement, it can match for you automatically. And there's a few other features that differentiate this product from the standard tool that you get within the bank services module. And I'll highlight those as we move along today. So the first difference would be the fact that you don't require an OFX file. As Nick mentioned, my example today is an Excel spreadsheet, but similar to like an EFT product, within RecXpress for bank services, there are bank file formats that are developed for the software that are able to read the download file that you get from the bank. So currently there are about 160 different formats that are pre-configured within the software. But if by chance your bank format is not in the software as long as you're on a current version of Sage 300. And that would be the same rules that apply for Sage. So current would be considered as version 2019, version 2018, or version 2017. As long as you're on a current version of Sage 300, the developer will add your bank format free of charge. So there really shouldn't be a concern as to whether or not you'd be able to use this product. So once you browse and grab that file that you've downloaded from the bank, you would say okay to import that file, and it's going to go through the import routine and then tell you how many lines of detail it inserted with that import routine. Now, as soon as I hit this close button, it's going to start through the matching process. RecXpress for Bank Services will actually pass through the information twice. So it's going to pass through the first time and do a match based on the reference. And then it will pass through a second time, looking at those entries that still haven't reconciled, and try to do a match based on the amount. And if there's more than one amount that's the same, then it's going to refer to the date to determine which entry to match it against. So you'll see it doing the match by reference, and then quickly at the end, you'll see where it does that match based on amount. And then it's going to tell me that it's successfully imported the records. So on this front screen, this main screen, you'll be able to see certain information from Sage 300. So things like the deposits and withdrawals outstanding, any unposted entries in Sage 300. Now, this company's not doing very well, but in the case of a real life scenario, if you have people reconciling your bank statement, then you don't want them to be able to see the overall bank balance, then that field could be grayed out. The third column is where we're seeing the information relating to the import that we've just done. So the total value that was imported, the value that matched, what was left as unmatched, and there is a special category called matched with error. The matched with error category is where the software has deemed transactions to be a match based on the reference, but there's a variance in the amount. So it will do the match, but then it will put it into this special category of matched with error. You know, oftentimes it might be a penny or two difference, and you can determine how you want to handle that variance in the amount. So when I go to the main RecXpress screen, I'm going to now see all of those entries that I've just imported from my bank statement. And you'll see various import statuses, we call them. Now you can split this screen. By clicking the Show Bank, it's now showing me the bank services entries at the bottom of the screen. So down here, I'm seeing the bank services entries, and at the top, I'm still seeing those entries that came in through the bank statement. You can filter these entries, so you can filter them based on what was correctly matched, that filtering of matched with error. As you click on these, it will filter the entries so that you have fewer entries to review at any given time. And I can see, as I highlight on a line, I can see the corresponding entry in bank services that it matched against. Now, although the software matches it for you, and nothing's cast in stone here, you certainly can override anything the software did before you post entries. So if by chance there was something that you did not want to match, then under the bank services entries on this used column, I could simply double click and say, no, I don't want to match it that way. And you can see that the status goes back to a no match entry. So, you know, it's extremely flexible in allowing you to override anything that the software has done for you automatically. So you can filter based on those correctly matched. You can filter based on the matched with error. If it matched something based on the amount, you can filter that to review it. If there were more than one amount that were the same, you could filter that. Ultimately, you'll be left with a no match that we'll circle back to, but I want to highlight another key feature that's available with the RecXpress for Bank Services that you do not have in the standard bank services tool. And that's the ability to take one statement entry and match it against multiple entries in bank services, or the other way around, where you're taking multiple entries from the bank statement that all relate to one entry in bank services. You wouldn't have that capability with your standard bank reconciliation tool. So if we go to the no match, this is where you'll be going to review those entries that did not match, determine how you want to match them, and then you can create rules so that those types of entries can reconcile for you automatically. So if we look at an example related to, one entry on the bank statement that relates to multiple entries in bank services, in that type of a scenario where we're taking multiple entries against one entry, that's going to be a process that a user is going to have to take care of. But when we get to the one-to-one type, one entry on the statement relates to one bank services entry, that's where you can start to do automation. But even in the case where a user needs to manually do the entry, if I highlight this line on the statement, we can see that it relates to 3 different entries in bank services. So all we need to do in this case is go down to my bank services entries, and I can sort these entries by reference, by date, by amount or description in ascending or descending order. I can just refetch and it's going to resort it for me. So I can look for those entries that I want to match against. So I can see there's my 5789, my 4567, and my 5896. So all I have to do to match those is highlight the line on the statement, and then down under the bank services entry in the use column, double click to say I want to apply that entry. And I can do that against all 3 of these lines, and you can see that the status will then change one statement to many bank entries. So as I mentioned, that will be a manual process. But when we get to doing a one-to-one type entry, you can resort your bank services entries, of course, filtering them by the status, but you can also sort these by reference, by date, by amount, a bank reference, in ascending or descending order. When the bank format gets set up for you, the categories will also be set up. And I can show you a screen where you can go in and add a new category if a new category turns up on your bank statement. So I can say I'm only interested in reviewing deposits right now. And again, it's going to filter those entries for me. So I'm only looking at deposits at this point in time. So you would do your manual matching, but then if you come over to the other side of the screen is where you can see those rules. So if we drill in, and you can get to this rules template through a main screen as well, where you can come and generate new rules. So the way you would go about doing that, this compare description is a free form field where you can enter any information in order to identify that entry on your bank statement. And you can do an equal to statement where you're saying, look for this information at the very beginning of the description string on my bank statement. Or you can do a like statement where you're saying, look for these characters anywhere within the description string. And we've also given you the capability of adding in wildcards. We had a client that needed more than one piece of information. I think it was the same credit card, but then there was additional information on the statement that related to something specific within their organization. So we added in wildcard capability. So that now gives you the ability to utilize more than one piece of information on that entry in the bank statement. So you really have a lot of flexibility in identifying that entry on the statement. Once you've identified the entry, you can then specify how you want to handle it within Sage 300. So if you're using a distribution code or a distribution set, you can just pull that in and say, this is how I want to distribute it. Or you can specify a GL account. So you can say when interest, for example, comes through the statement, I want it to hit this GL code. Posting through bank services. But you can also generate entries in bank services. So, maybe there's that penny or two difference and you just want to generate a write-off for that. Or you can specify an entry for accounts receivable or accounts payable. And in the case of accounts receivable or accounts payable, you would then specify the specific vendor or customer that that entry relates to, and then how you want to handle it against that specific vendor or customer. You can set it up as a prepayment against the customer or vendor record and have a user come along and apply the funds. Or you can say auto allocate it, meaning start with the oldest invoice first and apply the funds until they've been consumed. Or I need to look for the equal amount or look for the document number to apply it against. Now, if you set amount or document number and the system can't find it, then it won't just skip it. It will set it up as a prepayment for you, and then a user can come along and apply the funds as necessary. The other advantage you get with RecXpress for bank services is the ability to use optional fields. The bank services module is not compatible with optional fields. So if you are utilizing optional fields, you can utilize those here with the RecXpress for bank services, and it will post through bank services over to AR or AP. So the idea, initially when the product is installed for you, there'll be certain things that you know off the top of your head, and we would set up those rules for you and then give you training on how to set up additional rules. So the idea is that over time, more and more entries are going to match for you automatically, and you can spend more time on those anomalies that are coming through the statement. So you can batch the entries, you can post the entries straight from RecXpress, you can review your AP or AR batches straight from this window. But when we talk about posting the entries, you can actually specify which ones to automatically post and which ones you may want to review ahead of time. You can set up your optional fields here. And as we mentioned, this product actually ships around the world. We do have it separated for North America, but as you're well aware, the same bank could have multiple bank formats. I can see multiple here for the TD Bank. So typically what we would suggest is that you send us a copy of your downloaded statement so we can review it and we can tell you which format you should be using. And if by chance yours is not there, then they will add it for you free of charge as long as you're on a current version of Sage 300. The transaction codes, these of course will be set up when the bank format gets set up. But if by chance a new transaction code turns up on your statement, you could just add that in this screen. And then, so this is, I had mentioned that you can get to the rules straight from under the setup. This is where you could come to amend that template, or you can get to it from the standard bank services screen. Now, the security, so I mentioned that we do respect the security of Sage 300, but if you have multiple bank accounts and multiple people doing reconciliations for you, then you can determine through this RecXpress security screen which banks a user would have access to. So you can give them the features, but then you can specify which banks that they can do the reconciliation on behalf of. So just an extra layer of security for you there. So that is the RecXpress for bank services. Now, Nick, did you want to do Q&A on each product separately, or do you want to wait until the end and do it at the end?
I think it would be best if we just wait till the end, just do all the questions at once.
Sure, that sounds fine with me. Yes, thank you. So the next product that we want to look at is the document management link. So, you know, we often hear when we talk about document management solutions, there are a number of solutions out there that you can use with Sage 300. There are products that do OCR capture where you can feed a piece of paper in, it can read the fields on that piece of paper, it can populate the screen in Sage 300 for you. And when we talk about those types of products, you know, they can get quite expensive. So they're very niche products, I would say. You know, your organization would have to be putting through a lot of entries to warrant bringing in a piece of software that powerful. And to give you an idea, they would start around $25,000 or $30,000 and can get into six figures quite quickly. You know, depending on how many different types of documents you need to capture automatically for you. So Orchid Systems created the document management link solution. With this solution, we're assuming that you have the documents in an electronic form. Now, whether that's they come into you electronically via email, for example, or they're coming in as paper documents and someone's responsible for scanning those documents. But we're assuming that you have them in an electronic form, and we're giving you the ability to store those documents outside of Sage 300. In my example today, we're in a network folder. But you could also store documents in SharePoint or Dropbox, Google Docs. The software is giving you a link from where you're storing those documents to the screen of Sage 300, and more specifically, a field on that screen. So if I open up my AP invoice entry as an example, I have a number of configurations around the AP invoice entry screen. So the first thing you'll notice is there is an additional window that opens up beside your standard Sage screen. So we're not changing anything about your Sage 300 screen. We're just adding this window that's going to, and you can see when I move my screen, the window moves with it. If you're using more than one Sage 300 company and you potentially have more than one company open at a time, then you can pin the document management link window to the screen, as I have. And if I move my screen or minimize my screen, the document management link window is going to go with it. So it's quite easy for you to keep track of which documents you're seeing against any particular screen that you have open. So the first box, and you can see as the window exceeds the size, a scroll bar will appear, whether it's within an individual window or the entire document management link window. You can resize this too just by dragging the dimensions of the box. So the first box that we see here is a configuration around the vendor number. So I've configured it around the vendor number field, and then based on the value within that field, it will determine the documents that I'm seeing. So currently I'm seeing all the documents that relate to my vendor 1200. If that value changes, so let's just say, it won't let me add to this because I think it's been posted. I can open up a different screen to show you if that value changes. So if that changes from vendor 1200 to vendor 1400, then I would start to see the documents related to vendor 1400. And you can name the boxes so I can easily identify what I'm seeing within that document management link window. The second window, what I've done is I've configured it against two fields on the screen. So I'm seeing the document that's related to vendor 1200 and this particular document number. So in this case, it's looking at this document number field. And I'm just going to open a new entry so that you can see how you would go about adding a new document. So before I put a value in the vendor number field, you can see, I can see the folders related to my vendor numbers. But as soon as I put a value in the field, it's going to filter it and show me the documents that relate to that particular vendor number. Again, down here, I'm seeing all of the documents related to that vendor because there's no value in this field. But let's just call this November 28, today's date. And then you can see, because I'm filtering now, I'm only seeing a blank window because I haven't stored a document yet for this document number, November 28. So when we talk about doing the scanning, you know, whether it comes in electronically or someone, you know, maybe in the mailroom is scanning documents that are coming in through the mailroom, we would often suggest that you scan into like a suspense type folder. So if it's a different user that's entering the transaction in Sage 300, they can browse out to one folder, find the document they need, and then refile that document into the foldering system you've created for Document Management Link. And all they would need to do is click this Add button. And then I can go out and scroll through or search for the documents. So if I look at just my documents, I have a suspense folder here. And this could be where things are being scanned into. Now, the converse of that would be you could scan straight into the folder that you've created for Document Management Link. So, you know, in the case of my vendor number, a document comes in relating to that vendor. I could scan straight into that folder. And then the next time someone opens the screen and that window opens, I would be able to see that document. So depending on the type of document, if it's not transaction related, then you could scan it straight into the folder. In the case of a transaction like this, I may have a copy of the invoice. So I can go and find that invoice, drag it, and drop it over the Document Management Link window. And now in my example, the invoice stayed in the suspense folder for demo purposes. But in a real life scenario, you'd want to refile that document. So all I would have to do is hold the Shift key when I do that drag and drop. And it's going to remove that document from the suspense folder and file it into the filing system I've created for Document Management Link. The other thing that you may have noticed that happened is it renamed the document for me. That is an optional configuration where I've said I want to rename the document based on the document number that was entered in the document number field. So that's why it renamed the document for me. And if I refresh this window, we'll then see that document stored in the vendor number folder. I can also go out and show you that I have my documents stored. So I created a folder on my C drive that's called Orchid Documents. And then I decided to separate my documents. So I have my AP documents, and within there, I have the folders for each of my vendors. And if we go into our vendor 1200 folder, there's that document that we just picked up out of my suspense folder. And it's refiled it for me here under the vendor number. Now, if I were to do that drag and drop against a vendor that does not have a folder, then Document Management Link is sophisticated enough that it can create some files for you. So it would add a file here for that vendor number and then file the document into that folder. So if we go ahead and do that, just to show you an example, let's add an entry. So let me just change what's here. I have another piece of software that's running that stops me from entering straight into AP. It's an approval workflow product that puts an approval process around the creation of an AP invoice. So I'll just change the information here. Let's call this 1750. And you'll see now the Document Management Link window clears out because I don't have any documents stored for that vendor number. So let's go ahead and add a document. We'll go out to our suspense folder again. And let's grab a quote, and we'll drag and drop that over the Document Management Link window. And now if we go, let's close that. If we go back to our foldering system, my C drive, Orchid documents, AP documents. There's now a folder that was created for my vendor 1750. And when I open that up, I can now see a copy of that quote. So it can create some file folders for you. You can open up documents from the document management link window as long as the user has the home program. So if you have any specialized documents for a special piece of software that you're running, as long as the user has the software required to open the document, you can store any file types through the document management link window. Now, if we go back to, I'll just say no to that. If we go back to an earlier batch, I'll just point out some of the other windows that we have configured here. I have a purchase order number configuration, and that is around this purchase order number field. Now, odds are you would be calling that up under the PO module. And so it's one configuration, and you can say within that configuration, any screen that has that field, be it a vendor number or a PO number or whatever field you're configuring against. You can say, I'd like to see those documents against all fields, or sorry, all screens that have that particular field. So in the case of the PO number, I would see that on the purchase order screen and the AP screen and the receipt screen and the PO invoice entry screen. Any screen that shows a PO number or has a PO number field, I'd be able to see the related documents. So I'm storing those documents once, but I can see them against multiple screens of Sage 300. And then this configuration at the bottom where I've got a configuration around the GL code, that's actually to show you that we can configure against an entry grid as well. So you have very few limitations in terms of the fields that you can link to. The only limitations you would have would be a checkbox or a drop-down list. Those are the only two things that we can't configure against. Other than that, you can configure against any field within Sage 300. And because this product is an SDK product, you can configure this around any third-party product that installs within your Sage 300 environment. So, for example, the EFT file, as long as it's an SDK product, then you could configure against that. So actually, if I open up, say, the vendor screen, and I called up that same vendor 1200, I'm seeing those same documents that we were seeing under the AP screen. So the document management link is quite simple to configure. It will install under something that we call Information Manager. And under the setup options is where you would come to configure document management link. And I will mention, you'll notice notes here. Within Information Manager, there is a notes component as well. So we've been showing you the document management link. You could have the same window displaying notes. And similar to document management link, you could configure notes around any screen in Sage 300 and any other third-party product that's installed within your environment. So similar to document management link, you would store those notes against a field. And you can have that window open, or you could just have something pop up and fade away, or you can have an icon change colors or blink to notify a user that there's a note against a screen. So that is a separate product, but I just thought I would mention it because we can see that configuration in this window. So if we look at, now I have a lot of configuration going on here because this is a database that I've built to show the life of a purchase from creating a requisition all the way through to bank reconciliation. and all of the components in between. So I have a number of products running in my environment, which is why I have so many lines of configuration. But you can see this Roto ID column. This refers to a specific screen in Sage 300. Every screen has what we call a Roto ID, which is an identifier for that screen. So you can configure against a specific screen, or as in my vendor number, I left it blank, and that's telling the software that I want to see those documents against any screen that has a vendor number field. So you have options in terms of where you're seeing documents and how you're seeing those documents. But if we go into the configuration where I've isolated my document related to the AP invoice screen, under the details is where you do the configuration. And I'm storing in a network folder, but again, you could be storing in SharePoint or Google Docs or Dropbox. I'm specifying for my AP invoice screen, I want to also see the document number. So my first field that I'm configuring against is that vendor number field, but then I'm saying I also want to filter against the document number field. So you can configure up to 2 fields, and then the path to the folder that you're storing the documents in. So we went to my C drive, my Orchid file, my documents, my AP documents, because I wanted to separate those. And then this value is how the system knows how to name that file that it's going to create for me. So I'm saying that value should be the vendor number. And then value 2 relates to the document number. And I've renamed that file based on value 2, which is my document number. So that's why it renamed the document for me to November 28. And then in the case of document management link, you're going to show the alert. That is the box opening up and sitting on your screen. But as I mentioned with notes, you could just say change the icon to a different color, or make it blink, or have it pop up and sit on the screen. Or you could say have it pop up and fade away. But that's related to the Notes product. So you can come in here and do the configuration. So you can have as many lines of configuration as you need for those documents to be popping up. Now, just a couple of other features to highlight here, and then we're happy to open it up to some questions for you. You may or may not have noticed on the standard Sage screen, there's an email icon and a little box with a squiggly line. So the email icon, if you're in a Sage 300 screen and you want someone else to look at it, you can easily click that link. Click on the email icon. It should be opening. It should be opening my Outlook. Typically clicking on that would open up your Outlook, and you can just paste a link and you can email that link to a user. And the squiggly box tells you that there's a configuration against this screen. So if you were not having the document management link window open automatically, then the user would be able to identify that there is a document, or in the case of notes, that there's a note against this screen, and you can click that to open the box. Now, I've also been navigating the long way, going through my file folders to show you the configuration, but I could also click this new button and I can go directly to any of the folders that I have created for Document Management Link. So I can just click on that and it'll take me straight to the folder. So you don't have to navigate the long way to get to the network folder or the folder that you've configured Document Management Link against. So I guess at this point, I'm happy to open it up to any specific questions that anyone may have related either to the RecXpress for bank services or to the Orchid Document Management Link.
Just checking the chat window here, Nancy.
Oh, great, thank you.
Nancy, here's a question. How do I go about getting a new bank file set up if it's not already configured? Is there a process for that?
Yeah, so if you could download the statement from your bank and pass that over to Acumen, we'll then pass it on to the developer and they'll review it and review the formats that are already set up in the software. And if the statement format is not already in the software, then as long as you're on a current version of Sage 300, we can add that for you free of charge.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? If anyone has one, feel free to put it in the Q&A or the chat window, please. It looks like that's it for questions. So I think we'll go ahead and wrap it up a little bit early here. And thank you, Nancy, for a great presentation. Thanks everyone for attending again, and stay tuned for invites for the next webinar Wednesday in 2 weeks. Have a great day. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Nick.